Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Timothy Lee, and I'm a research analyst at Red Cloud Securities. I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on nickel exploration and development today. We will hear from Terry Lynch, CEO of Power Nickel Incorporated. During today's webinar, he will provide an overview and outlook. Then we will take questions. You can type your questions into the chat box at any time, and we will get to as many as we can. Before we kick things off, first we need to discuss some fine print. During this Power Nickel webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I would direct listeners to the company's forward-looking statements disclosure outlined on page 2 of the Power Nickel corporate presentation, and that can be found on the company's website, powernickel.com. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors, and participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. Please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures on Power Nickel. So we have Power Nickel presenting today. The company is primarily focused on a nickel copper PGM project in Quebec, obviously one of the premier mining jurisdictions globally. With that, I now turn it over to Terry to update our audience on the company.
Thanks very much, Tim. Great to be here and looking forward to taking you through the story. We'll go back to the start here. The slides were a little out of order. That's okay. So the title of our presentation today is the world's first carbon neutral nickel mine. So we'll walk you through that as we go through it. Tim alluded to the fact that we'll be talking about some forward-looking statements. It's always good to do your due diligence in any investment, and would recommend you do the same. I find personally when I invest that when I invest with the macro and the micro being aligned, that's when I do the best. What do I mean by that? Well, there's a theory about, when a tide comes in, you want to be in that direction in investing. So you want to be on that boat coming in, and a good tide will raise all boats. But if you're on a good boat, you'll do much better. And I think that's about what's about to happen for Power Nickel and in commodities in general. So the tide in this case is commodities. So on the top chart on the left there, you can see this commodities to equity ratio, and the commodities are just starting to turn here. They've been savaged for quite a long time. And it's not just on the graphs, it's actually starting to happen in real life. So basically, you're seeing that in the evidence of the investment that's being made in, for example, in the battery metal sector, which is our sector. Something like $50 billion of commitments have been made. And in fact, shovels are turning, and they're building battery metal plants across eastern United States and Quebec and Ontario. So that's, those plants will need new battery metals like nickel, like cobalt, like copper, like lithium, so graphite, etc. So that's a sign of real change, and that will implicate into the demand and the pricing of these materials, and ultimately would hope into the stock price of commodity companies like ourselves. Generally, what's driving that is the whole electrification, the commitment to decarbonizing the economy. So, and that's being driven by, government agenda, right? So in the United States, they have the Inflation Reduction Act, which is, providing some pretty significant incentives for people to switch to electric vehicles. And these vehicle incentives, start, I think, around $7,500 per car or so. And it starts with about a 40% North American supply commitment right now, but by the end of 2030, that'll be up to 90%. So, for example, that would be impossible to do today if you didn't have North American nickel. So, obviously, if you have a nickel supplier in North America like Power Nickel, that's going to be, favorable wind at your sails. And it's not just the United States that's providing the incentives. The European Union is doing some massive incentivizing as well, Korea, and of course, Canada. So, unbeknownst to most people in the investment community, while the regional banking crisis was raging, everyone's concerned about Silicon Valley Bank and the contagion, the Canadian federal budget and the Quebec provincial budgets were announced, and they provided some substantial incentives for building critical mineral mines. So in Quebec, they'll give you up to 25% to build and equip a mine. and the federal government up to 30% tax credit, which obviously can be converted to cash. So all of a sudden, if you're going to build a $400 million nickel mine, like Power Nickel might do in the future, a high grade nickel mine, designed to build powders and nickel wire and anodes that battery manufacturers are looking for, over 200 million of that could be provided from the government. So that's really groundbreaking, and it's startling that didn't implicate into share prices for Power Nickel and for other critical mineral suppliers in Quebec and across the country that these advantages will lead to. So that's a massive, I think, positive headwind for this whole sector. Let's talk a bit about the micro story, about the Power Nickel story, which we're going to get into in great detail here shortly. So that slide you see up on the screen, I don't expect you to be able to read it right now, but the long and short of it is that it basically shows, that, we're significantly undervalued relative to our peer group. I'll get into that comparable shortly, but we're multiples undervalued, anywhere from 4 to 20 times undervalued. So that's a significant discount that, as an investor, you'll be able to take advantage of if you believe our story. And the evidence is compelling, and we're going to walk you through that today. What is this evidence? Well, the evidence is the best evidence, the drill bit, because that doesn't lie. Assays are immutable. It's either a 1 or a 0. The assays are there or they're not. So we've been delivering great assays for the last several months. We had more out this week, and we got more coming. And these assays ultimately will lead to a new 43101, which will be updated in Q3. We had hoped to have it out at the end of July, but some delays in the metallurgical that will mean it's going to be out in early mid-September. In any event, we'll update our 43101 in Q3. At that point, we'd expect to go, this mine will be perceived as commercial, if not before then, because obviously we're posting all the drill colors, and one can do the math themselves and come to the conclusion that this is going to be a commercial mine. We'll get into more of that in the presentation. And that's just going to be the beginning. This has all been done pretty much on NISK Main, which is one of the pods. We think every single nickel sulfide mine in the history of the world has been multiple pod. So think of it as multiple deposits that ultimately, make a commercial mine. So we've got this one pod that's going to be enough to make us commercial, but that won't be the end. We believe this will be much bigger. Some analogies that we're thinking of is, Lynn Lake at 22 million tons, and Voisey's Bay, which we alluded to in our sort of teaser for the show, is over 50. Yeah, we could get to 50 million tons. I mean, that's a bold thing, and obviously things will have to happen for us on the drill bit, but you'll see from some of our evidence here that we're going to show you that that's very much in the works. So this is going to be a big, and very interesting story, and let's get into it in more detail now. Starts with where we're located. So Tim mentioned that we're located in the province of Quebec. We're located basically just south and east of James Bay, just outside of a small town called Nemaska, probably best known for the Nemaska lithium mine that's being commissioned right now. So, let's start there. I mean, there's probably 4 mines being built in the surrounding area. And what does that mean? Well, it means that you must have a great relationship with the local community. So the Quebec government's done an amazing job, we feel, in providing leadership and cooperation with the Aboriginal groups, in this case the Cree, to show them how they could, basically participate in the wealth created by mining. And for example, when our drillers were going home at night from our project, which is 8 kilometers outside of Nemaska, they were staying at a very beautiful Cree resort lodge that's been built there. So we're already working with them, and I think that's one of the pluses about Quebec, is that they've done a great job with community relations. The other big thing, of course, would be infrastructure. So we're located off of Route North, a major 4-lane highway. Right across the road from us is a Hydro-Quebec substation. So that means, yes, cheap, green hydropower will be able to power our electric mine. And, we're 8 kilometers outside of Nemaska, where there's a regional airport. So it's just amazing to have these facilities so close. I've been in many mining jurisdictions where, it takes, hours to get to the spot to do drilling, and super expensive. So having infrastructure close at hand and having good logistics is a major asset for any mine. So we've got that here. And finally, the big point that makes Quebec arguably the best jurisdiction in the world for critical minerals, I would suggest, is their financial incentives. So we just recently closed a financing at around 50 cents per unit, which was a share and a half warrant at 50 cents. When we announced that the stock was 28 cents, and subsequent stocks trading around 25 today. And you say, well, how could you close the financing at 50 cents if your stock's at 25? Well, you can do that because of the incentives that are available to explore for critical minerals in Quebec. So, for example, we were able to get Quebec-based financial investors that are paying top marginal tax rates. They invested and bought the units for 50 cents, and they sold the unit immediately to our end-use investors for 25 cents. So, that ultimately gave the first investor, he reduced his tax from 54% to 42%. So a big win for them with no additional risk. And then for the investor that put in 25 cents, they saw 50 cents going to work for them, which was a significant investment incentive for them. And the government's got, effectively almost $5 million targeted at critical mineral investment, which is what their social policy agenda is. So it's a win-win-win all around. But I mean, the long and short of it is you don't get that anywhere else. You don't get that in Chile. You don't get that in Africa. You get that in Quebec. So that's an amazing edge. Second, that's just the exploration side. Now we've got the development side, the commercialization. They're going to give you up to 55% to build the mines. So again, doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. This is an amazing benefit that Quebec has got. And honestly, I don't believe the financial markets have really paid attention to this because it's a windfall benefit for companies in Quebec that are deemed to be commercial. When we talked at the outset, the topic was world's first carbon neutral nickel mine. What do we mean by that? Well, generally speaking, this whole decarbonization thing is a powerful worldwide movement, and we think that we can be a big part of it by creating the world's first carbon neutral nickel mine. How can we do that? Well, we start off small because initially our carbon footprint is basically the drilling we do. So we participated with a company called CarbonX. They're sort of a leader, I would say. They have this thing called Drill Green, and we basically added an extra 25 cents to our drilling cost. So instead of spending $200 a meter, we spent 225 cents. And now, our plan on 40,000 meters of drilling in 2023 has been carbon offset. So that's a step in the right direction. Verra certified carbon credits. Going forward, how do we plan to sort of meet our goal? Well, we're very lucky, and part is you work with the strategic competitive advantages you have. So we're in Quebec. We have amazing green hydropower that's going to provide very economic rates, probably one of the most competitive economic packages for power in the world. So that will be used to power an electrified mine. And we're planning to do that mine within the most environmentally friendly design. And the other benefit we've got is we've got this ultramafic deposit. So we know now it's scientifically proven that ultramafic tailings actually sequester carbon. There's ways to really boost that. So all these things can be taken together, and we believe that at the end of the day, we'll be able to produce the world's first carbon neutral mine. Now, other than being patted on the back and saying, oh, what a great environmental move, it's actually a great business move. So what will it mean is because cleaner nickel is going to yield higher prices. That's my prediction. I know this because I was into Korea, met with a number of I met with all the big Korean battery manufacturers. They're currently buying most of their nickel through Indonesia and the Philippines. And those are laterite deposits that require a significant CO2 burn to make it into nickel. It'll never really be clean nickel. It's always going to be dirty nickel. So they need to access really clean nickel to sort of, balance that out. So we've got significant interest from those folks, and others will be interested as well because this will be a really premium nickel, and people will use it to their marketing advantage. And that's why we'll get premium pricing for this nickel, I believe, as we go forward. The environmental aspects notwithstanding, nothing matters more for a mining company than having a great ore body. And we've got a great ore body at Power Nickel. We started off with about 3.1 million tons of a high-grade nickel sulfide. That's a historical resource you see on the screen. We then followed it up by basically proving that resource up. 8 holes, 7 of the 8 hit, was a very interesting ore body. That package you see here is about a square kilometer. So we again hit about 7 of the 8, all in the 1.5, 1.6% nickel EQ, big intersections. Then we laid out basically a 30,000 meter program to sort of prove it to be commercial. We're about halfway through that. I'm going to walk you through some of the highlights here. Again, this is in this 1 square kilometer area. Our first set of assays released a hole that was 150 meters away from our nearest resource. So the resource, we would think the resource right now, before we started our September program, would have been in the 4 to 5 million ton range. And then we started with these results. So this was 150 meters away from the nearest resource that was kicked up by the previous 8 holes. So all of a sudden, this was 40 meters of almost 1.6% nickel EQ. And then the next set of assays, we had almost 10 meters of 3% nickel EQ, followed up by about 16 meters of 1.6% nickel EQ, followed up just yesterday by another one of 14 meters of about 1.5% nickel EQ. About 60% of all of our holes have 1% nickel EQ or better. And, we've hit on about 60% of our holes. So it's pretty impressive. This is what the nickel body looks like. It's pretty, we call it the river of nickel. And it really sort of starts from subsurface, goes up to the surface and comes back down. And you can see there's a lot of twists and turns in this. And that's, the nature of the ore body discovery is we got to pick up these twists and turns because they contain considerable tonnage. If you look at it from the overhead section, you can see this is like the linear look across the project is about a 1 kilometer stretch. Gives you a fair feel for the, again, you're always hoping to hit the widest river possible, the deepest and the cloudiest being grade. But of course, the ore body will be the ore body, and so you can see it, it pinches and swells and it gets deeper too. So the grade's been pretty consistent across the parameter. So that's what sort of leads this work, the fact that we've done so much of it gives us confidence in saying we think when we update our 43-101 that will be, north of 8 million tons, and contain probably more than 100,000 contained tons of nickel. We think 50,000 contained tons of nickel would make it commercial today, so we're going to be more than double that. And we think that's just the start. We think there's going to be a lot more nickel found at our project. We have a 45 square kilometer package. We've only been working about 2% of that, about 1 square kilometer. We have an ultramafic sequence that goes from almost my cursor over here to the left, all the way up to the right, over 6 kilometers long. And we just flown airborne EM over that. We've got some preliminary results, and that looks very exciting. We'll have a full report out of that within the month of June, and that'll, I think, really be exciting for the market to see. We did do a very interesting step-out hole. We had identified at the northern end of the property an ultramafic sequence at surface, and we thought, let's go and see if it's still there. And so we drilled it, and lo and behold, not only is it there, but a massive wildcat success. So we had a bonanza hole of about 8 meters of almost 1 ounce PGMs. So we didn't really get into the ultramafic sequence. We touched it, but we didn't go too deep because we're doing some other stuff up there that will allow us to, articulate that. But obviously, that's a pivotal hole in a way because it's such a high-grade hole. It's and so far out, like 5 kilometers. We believe it's all part of the same deposit. So that really brings up memories of Norilsk, in Russia, and Voisey's Bay in Labrador. So this will be a very big mine in my view, and evidence like that is certainly very exciting for the exploration team. How are we going to find the rest of these pods? We're doing, the conventional stuff, like we're airborne EM, I think is a fairly conventional tactic. It's basically going to be successful with the nickel because it's a massive sulfide, so highly magnetic. So it's very good within the first 150 meters. If you have an ore body in there, it'll pick it up. As it gets deeper, it's less useful. That's when the downhole EM could be helpful, gravity and IP. But there's a new sort of tool in the shed, if you would. It's called ambient noise tomography. And this was a technology that we identified from Talon Metals, which is a very fine nickel deposit in Michigan, Minnesota. We'll talk about them more in a second. But Elon Musk, Tesla has a offset agreement with them. We believe because he actually this ambient noise tomography is something that is produced by an Aussie company called Fleet Space Technologies, and Elon put them their satellite in space so they could do this. And we believe he brought this to Talon Metals, and Talon has used it and successfully. And we basically found out about it from them. We looked at the technology. I brought it to my scientific team, and they were quite skeptical at first, but then they did the homework and they realized, wow, this could be groundbreaking. So basically what the technology is it takes this geode, this silver geode here in the top left-hand corner, and it puts it over in our case, we'll put it over our core deposit, and we put them in about 100-meter spacings and in a grid-like pattern. And these geodes send a pulse down into the earth, and it goes down 2,000 meters and comes back as a sound map. And these sound maps are then correlated. So for example, where we had that 40-meter hole of 1.6% nickel EQ, that will correlate to a specific sound map. Okay. And then they have their software algorithms that basically look for those signatures of the massive sulfides where we know they're scientifically there. They correlate to a specific sound map. So we look for sound maps that have those types of signatures. Now, the sound maps could be below our current river of nickel that's on our NISK main. It also could be adjacent in that 6-kilometer sequence, or possibly somewhere else in our 45 square kilometers. So we're quite hopeful that this will be a very effective tool, in addition to using the airborne EM and all the other tools we talked about to fine-tune our next round of drilling, which is fully funded and ready to go. So, what does this mean? This is, I think, the money slide. This is where, if you're not an investor, you should look and study at it and become an investor, because if you believe that our drilling bit has been successful, as the evidence has shown with assays, and you believe we're going to upgrade the tonnage and grade, that we show right here, more in line with what we've got across the board, then obviously the valuations are going to change. So we're thinking like this is basically 90 million to 500 million in valuation for comparable nickel sulfide deals around the world. And this Talon Metals we talked about, they basically, I think that's 180. These are all US numbers. We're at 25. And now that's for 60%. So that would mean that this deposit right now is worth 300, and that's down by about half. Like all the nickel stocks have been pounded. As you all know, that the metal indexes are down, but it seems ridiculous because you're not going to be able to get to these battery objectives and the electric, and the decarbonization objectives that the governments have if you don't have raw materials. So this sector is going to come back and raging back, and people should be buying on this weakness. But even within the weakness, you can see the discrepancy here. Like we are vastly undervalued. And that's going to change. I don't know when the penny's going to drop for folks. It could be today when you're listening. You're going to go out there and buy the stock, or maybe that we'll have to continue to put out more drill results and ultimately the 43-101. But at some point, this thing is going to take off like a fire truck, and if you're not on, you're going to miss it. So the NISK-Action Plan, basically release drill results. So we'll have more drill results out in about 2 or 3 weeks. We'll be updating and releasing our airborne EM survey that we alluded to. We're going to use all those scientific techniques to identify the drill targets for the next round. We'll be obviously announcing, the deployment of the fleet technologies in the field. And within, almost a week of it being in the field, it starts to generate data and starts to give us a visualization of our current core deposit and, what other ones look exciting. So we'll be basically using that data to start drilling probably around July 24th, I think is the target date for the drills. And they'll be rolling on a 15,000 meter program from then until Christmas. And we have an option on a second rig, and we may well put that in play as well. I would expect to basically complete our metallurgical study and get that done in end of August or early September. That'll allow us to update our 43-101 in Q3 in September. And at the bottom, I talk about delivering a PEA or better by Q2 of next year. What do I mean by or better? Well, we've been approached by a big commercial nickel processing company, and they believe this is going to be a mine. They've offered to pay for a feasibility study and work with us on a feasibility study on the mine. So we're just going through our due diligence with them right now, but I expect there could be an announcement on that in the month of June. And obviously at that point, we would leapfrog this and go directly to feasibility, which is highly exciting and super encouraging for us as shareholders. That's the nickel story of Power Nickel. There is a significant bonus component that you'll get as a shareholder. I'm going to talk about that for a few minutes, and then we'll take questions. Generally speaking, we used to be a copper gold exploration company. So we're going to spin off one of our assets called Golden Ivan, which is this yellow section here up in the Golden Triangle. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Golden Triangle. It's home to some of Canada's biggest and most profitable gold and copper mines. producing several millions of ounces of gold and silver and billions of pounds of copper, and many more mines to be built. So just north of us in the red is Scotty Resources, a very fine junior. They've got as many 50-gram, gold holes as Great Bear did at a similar state in history. So I like that project a lot. We border on that. Right beneath is a strike point, and their best results are right on our border. Ascot's building a mine over here. So this is, very interesting area and what's going to be our primary ground. And then we'll talk about Chile in just a second. Continuing on with Golden Ivan, basically we have 3 half-ounce gold showings at surface. Silverados was 2 ounces over here. So very exciting stuff. Never been drilled. So this was going to be our primary flagship until NISK. I was able to acquire NISK. So obviously we believe in it a lot. What's that going to be worth? These mines are sort of in the $17 to $65 million range right now. We think we'll probably roll it out at around 15 million or so, and we'll raise $1.5 million. And half of that value, or about $7.5 million in that case, would be dividended in 2 tranches to our existing core shareholders. So today that would almost represent 30% of our value. So, and again, most people have no idea that we really have anything other than nickel in our company. So that'll be a nice kicker for everyone. And then it gets better because we'll be ultimately acquiring the deposits, or the not deposits, but the exploration packages we have in Chile. We've got some pretty substantial packages down there. We used to be called Chilean Metals with our focus there. We have 4, 6, and 8,000 hectare copper exploration plays, copper gold, and they basically this is desert exploration. Desert exploration is not easy, and we've had some hits down there, but we haven't been able to find the prize because it's such a difficult thing, and we didn't have a lot of money. Now, interestingly enough, the ambient noise tomography, the space technology that we're using for NISK, one of the interesting features when I was going through their due diligence, it's been used a lot in Western Australia in the desert there. And the desert has a particular thing in sand called caliche, which basically obstructs IP and gravity and makes it tough to get a regional understanding of your geology. Well, the ambient noise tomography doesn't have that problem. So this will be the first time it's ever going to be used in Chile. So we're quite excited about that. So that'll be those geodes, once we're done using them in Quebec, we'll be shipping them to Chile to do this. And ultimately, this land package will be spun out. It will be acquired effectively by the new pubco that Golden Ivan is going to become through a plan of reorganization, and it'll be done through a fairness test. The reason why we do that is if we spun out both together, it would cost us about $300,000 in accounting, whereas if we do it this way, it's a $50,000 fairness opinion or something like that. So way more economic for our shareholders to do it this way, and we think that would be the best way to monetize that going forward. Last asset to talk about is that we have a significant royalty in the company. Again, most people have no clue. So we're in the business. Just after this call today, I'm actually back in with the royalty conversations with this very interested party. We hope to conclude a sale for between $5 to $7 million US by Q3 on this royalty. The management team is pretty lean, just myself and Ahmed at the moment. We're recruiting some folks now, given the success at NISK. I think it's important for me to note that we're using GeoVector as our technical team in Quebec, and they've been first rate. Joe Campbell, Adam Finlay, and the team have been outstanding. They've done a great job in guiding us, and with also help of Ken Williamson at 3D Geo. So we've had a really superior sort of science team, and you can't buy these guys, but you can rent them, and it's actually, with the tax programs, much more effective to do it that way. And in BC, we have Apex, which is another very, very fine scientific crew that's handling our exploration and our drilling that's going to come up this summer at Golden Ivan. So that's working out quite well. In Chile, Jimena operates that for us there. Our board is Greg McKinsey, ex-MD at Haywood, Peter, a very successful retired lawyer, and Les, a successful businessman. The board has about 4% of our company stock, so they've been very supportive. You can see the share, basically about 130 million outstanding, about 180 fully diluted. The Lynch family has about 20%. The top 5 shareholders at Critical Elements, Stern Family, BT Global, and Palace Capital have been the big investors the last 2 rounds. So probably 65-70% of each round has been acquired by these shareholders. And that's a great, I think these shareholders know us best. And obviously, you'd like to see the people that know you best writing checks continuing. So, as an investor, I always look to see, how much does the management team really believe. If they're writing their own checks, then they really believe, and that's something you want to sort of help closely examine. So, to summarize, before we get to questions, Power Nickel has made a major nickel sulfide discovery. We're trading at a significant discount to our peer group. The drill results show that we're going to be able to update our 43-101 and deliver a big upgrade that should show that this is going to be a commercial mine. This is going to be a heavy news flow story. Lots of assays, lots of airborne EM, the launch of the fleet, the Met study, new 43-101, ongoing drilling, more assays. So this will be a very active file. So something that's always good generally in the stock market. We've got a fully funded 15,000 meter drill program ready to start in mid-July using the intel that we've gathered through all those technical programs, including the ambient noise tomography. And we've already, found a very good pod that's going to get us commercial. We've got additional pod identifications that we think are quite interesting, both adjacent to our main stuff. And now as much as 5 kilometers away, we've got that, bonanza 8, meter hole of almost 1 ounce PGMs. This is looking like a very big ore body. So we're thinking we're going to be somewhere between 20 and 50 million tons, and that's going to make us $1 billion mine. So we're 25 million now. It's $1 billion US north. Do the math. It's pretty compelling. So we're in the hottest sector in the business, battery metals, and not just nickel, but copper, cobalt, palladium, and platinum. So NISK has got it all. The spin-off is going to give you a nice kicker. And we're finally, we're located in Quebec, where not only do you get 2-for-1 exploration, but now you get, as much as 55% of your mine is going to be provided for in terms of financing. So it really is coming up roses for Power Nickel, with the only exception being the stock price. But that's a great advantage for you who's listening today. You can take advantage of this today and buy at these really choice levels and participate in what we think is going to be a very rosy future. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Tim and we'll take any questions you may have.
Great. Thank you, Terry, for a very informative presentation. We'll now start the Q&A portion of the webinar. Just a reminder to everyone on the line that you can type your questions into the chat box at any time. We already do have a few questions. One, you've mentioned that this may be another Voisey's Bay. How big is Voisey's Bay, or can you tell us more about that mine?
Yeah, I mean, Voisey's Bay is north of 50 million tons at this point. Super. I think it's more around 2% NIEQ, something in that range. Was a very high grade, mine, and obviously been super productive for. I believe it's Glencore that owns it now, or Vale. I can't remember, but one of them is the big buyer there.
Right, great. And one question here, I think it is two separate things, but asking about the new technology, the ambient noise, and can that be used in the resource estimate? Although that's obviously a geophysical technique, so that's more used to.
Yeah, no, it's basically it's designed to target ore bodies as opposed to verify them. You have to verify with the drill bit.
Right, absolutely. And one other question here. How is the company's cash position, and do you expect to need to go back to the capital markets in the near term?
Yeah, I mean, we're basically funded, to drill into, we think, in 2024. So no plans to go back to the market right now. The next round of financing will probably be strategic. We'll probably do some, as I said, we're working on that feasibility approach with the industry partner that would become an equity investor, would have no first rights, would just be a straight equity investment, and would will obviously understand the deposit quite well if they do the feasibility study on it with us. But we'll try and keep our options quite neutral so that we're a free agent. And that's what we're thinking on the financing side.
Great. And can you elaborate more on the timeline for the ambient noise tomography results?
So we'll be deploying, the geodes are just being shipped in. We were talking with the Aussies yesterday, and they're on their way to us now. We'll probably start to deploy them, if not next week, then the following week. And then it's basically within a week, we start to get data that we can start using. And we basically will be taking a grid-like approach at moving it, around the various sectors of interest for us. And we can bring them in closer to get higher resolution. We can broaden it out, et cetera. So overall, it's probably a 2 to 3 month package, but we'll have a lot of intel in that period, and we'll probably release some of the, certainly the look at the core ore body, just so people could get a feel for that, and it should be pretty exciting. So we're looking forward to seeing it in operations for sure.
Great. Looking at the resource estimate upcoming, is there any chance that you think it'd be over 10 million tons, or will that require the next round of drilling?
You know what? I think my guess is probably would require additional drilling. Is my gut feeling. I think 10 would be at the top end right now. I think we'll get to more than 10. I think we'll be between 20 to 50. It's obviously a ballsy call, but I mean I just see that in the history of time, every nickel sulfide mine has been multiple pods. We've just got one pod. It's going to be a very sizable pod. And if there's 3 or 4 pods, what are the chances that we got the best pod first? Well, they're actually 1 in 3 or 1 in 4. So you do the math. So I think this is, and the fact that we stepped out 5 kilometers and had that big hit, that's indicative of some major action happening here geologically. So. And that's being supported by the airborne EM. So we're about as excited as you could get about a deposit. That's how excited we are with NISK.
Great. And shifting a bit here, can you tell us more about relations with First Nations groups in Quebec?
Yeah, I mean, basically, we inherited, a lot of the good work that Critical Elements did. They've got a signed agreement with the Cree there, and we actually optioned the property off of them, of course. And we've had some preliminary conversations, and I'm going to go up in end of June, and we're gonna have some meetings, and we are anticipating very cordial relationships. We're obviously doing business with them right now with our accommodations. We stay with the Cree, and they sleep and eat there. So ESG is a big part of our world now. We've been very progressive by buying the carbon offset credits and showing that we want to be a real partner in this. We've got a full ESG disclosure statement on our site. As a junior, you're not even obligated to do this in 2025. So we're fully committed to being a really appropriate partner for our communities that we work in and our stakeholders. So our relationship with the First Nation will be paramount, and we'll do everything we can to have a great one.
Great. You had mentioned that you're potentially looking at adding to your team. Are there any plans to change the structure or bring in additional senior management? Yeah,
we're negotiating right now with some team members that would come on and broaden our depth. You have to be careful as a junior, as a nano-cap junior, in these tight capital markets. You've only got so much money, and generally speaking, you need to put that money in the ground and show that the world that you've got, in this case, a commercial deposit. At some point, of course, then you have to switch into, well, now we need to sort of provide a team that can take it through permitting and through the process to maximize value for shareholders. So we're starting to switch into that mode. So we're obviously, looking for folks to join the Power Nickel team that will allow us to, maximize our shareholder value.
And along similar lines, some companies have had challenges getting a hold of good drills and good drillers. Have you been able to get the drillers you need to get the work done efficiently?
Yeah, we've been great. Quebec is awesome in that it's got a lot of really fine drilling companies, and we've been able to work with a couple of them that have been great. And we've got we're already set to go in mid-July, and we're potentially, if the geological technology and all the ambient noise tomography and the airborne EM, identify that we need to have two rigs on site, then we'll gear up and get the second rig.
Great. One other question here that came in, would it be possible to buy out critical elements and acquire a 100% interest in the project?
I think, and you know, I mean, we're very friendly with Critical Elements, and they're a fine company. And I think if that became in the project's best interest for that to happen, then I'm sure that we could probably work that out. It's not something that we're first and foremost in our mind at the moment, but again, you know, we're very happy with the partnership and the relationship with the team. They've been great people to work with. JS and his guys really helped us out a lot, and you know, we're quite pleased with that relationship and looking forward to a very successful ongoing situation there.
Great. You recently had some exploration success with a wildcat hole that encountered a nice intersection. Can you tell us more about that? And do you have plans? When would you plan to do follow-up drilling on that?
Yeah, so it was, you know, I have to give full credit to Eric Herbert and Adam Finley and Joe Campbell and the team at GeoVector. They basically identified, you know, in searching out the site, you know, on foot and walking through it, they identified several interesting ultramafic occurrences at surface. And this one they liked a lot because they're of an old EM hit that they had on a very ancient study. But it was enough that they convinced me that it was a worthy target to take a shot at. It was a winter target, i.e. the area is a little bit marshy, so it's best to drill it when it's frozen. So we thought, okay, if we don't look at it now, we were sort of stuck for, you know, until it freezes up in November, December or whatever. So we thought better to have a look. So we had a look and, you know, of course, had a great result. That was at 60 meters, you know, so the jokes were like, guys, we got to get out there with the backhoe and get down there because, you know, 1 ounce material, we can pay for this thing, you know. So it's pretty impressive. It's open in all directions. So it's a super exciting hole. Interesting enough, it was in the tonalite above the ultramafic sequence. So we haven't even gotten into the massive sulfides yet, so which we think are beneath there. And the theory is that this is what typically happens on these types of deposits is you'll get some pooling of the PGMs in the tonalite above the massive sulfide in these really rich ore bodies. So that's what we found. So you can imagine, we'll be chasing that down. After we move over the NISK core ore body with the ambient noise tomography, we're moving it up there to map that out. And because then obviously we know that that's a hit. And what does that look like on the ANT? So we're pretty stoked about that discovery because it really, you know, changes the complexion about how big this thing can be and how rich it can be.
Great. Now, one question, maybe I'll rephrase it slightly, but how much additional drilling would you need to kind of drill up a deposit that would be ready to advance through development toward the mining stage?
I think we're ready to advance towards development to the mining stage right now. And that's what's been shown by having the interest of a major to come in and saying, hey, we're prepared to write up a check and do a feasibility study on it. Now, we know the deposit is going to grow, but there's enough there to make it a mine today. So that's our view of it. This is going to become a mine. So, you know, in terms of the drilling, you know, generally speaking, one drill rig can drill, you know, 100 meters a day, theoretically. Generally speaking, they don't average that. They average more like 70 in my experience. So, you know, I think in order to, if you look and say, let's say we've got to 8 million tons now, and we've done basically, call it 26,000 meters of drilling. So, you know, so every 25,000 meters is 8 million tons. Let's say if you were able to keep that just rule of thumb going. So, you know, in order to get 16 million tons, you get another 25,000 meters of drilling and so forth. So that would be, you know, 50,000 meters of drilling for, you know, 16 million tons. So 100,000 meters of drilling for 32 million tons. So you get the sense of it. So we'll probably be drilling this thing for the next couple of years. But at the same time, we can be doing this parallel processing where you're getting permits, getting the feasibility study done, so you can do this all in sequence, so that when you're done drilling, you're maybe done permitting, and you're able to start or at least advance permitting a long ways away, and then you can start to look at how quickly you can get in the ground and build this thing. And it's probably 2 years to build the mine. So we're trying to push it so that we can get theoretically a 2029 mine. That would be pushing it, but it's certainly feasible with the team that we're putting together.
And one follow-up to that, looking long term here, strategically, would you plan to move to that mining stage alone, or would you bring in a partner or look to sell the company?
Yeah, we'd never build it alone. We just don't have the skill set, and that's just not our expertise. So there's really two options for us. One is to find as much ore as possible, prove the economics of the mining of it through the feasibility, etc., and then to sell it to a developer, whoever they might be, or joint venture. I would have, a year ago, if you'd asked me, I would have said that would be the way to go. Today, having now sort of gone through the process, it's a changing world. We would never have been invited a year ago to look at doing a JV with a processor, because they would just buy the nickel from whoever and then get into it, because the real money in nickel isn't in finding the nickel. I mean, it can be super attractive, but just to give you a number from the group that we're talking to, they said, Terry, what are you going to get for your nickel? And I said, well, I'm going to get LME, LME pricing. He says, that's right. He says, you know what I get? I said, no. He says, I get triple that. So by moving this nickel into powders and wires and anodes, they triple the economic package. So you can imagine what that would mean for us. So, and honestly, the capital cost for those types of mines is maybe an extra 150 million. So you're going from maybe 250 US to 400 million. And now you're tripling your economics. Of course, you now have to have the expertise to do that, and you have to have the customer relationships, et cetera, which we wouldn't have. But again, if we could partner with those people and do it in a fair way, changes the transformation of what would be the best way to exit this. So, all the options are on the table, and we're going to do what's right for our shareholders.
Great. And one question, circling back with Critical Elements. Does Critical Elements still own shares of Power Nickel, or does it possess an option?
No. So they participated in the last round. So they wrote a check. So they're still a big shareholder, just around a little over 10%, I think. And they also have 20% of the package, right? So we that's paperwork notwithstanding, we've spent enough now to earn our 80%. So that's been earned, and they have 20%. So that's the economics of the critical relationship.
Great. One question here: any plans for TR1 investors? Not sure exactly.
Maybe they're talking institutional investors. So institutionally, we've got two great ones already on board. BT Global, which has the top 5-year hedge fund in the country, and Palace Capital, which has I think the top 1-year fund. So those are both 3 or 4 percenters. So we were very happy to have them. They showed a lot of insight and confidence and belief, and they've been great people to work with. And we're closely talking to a number of funds right now. And the ETF in nickels are starting to look. So I think, I don't know when these guys are all going to pile on, but I have no doubt that, I believe we're fundamentally the most undervalued nickel deal on the planet. And we've got the most action happening. So I really think it's just a matter of when, not if, for those institutions to get involved.
Great. And one question, a little more administrative here, but will the presentation be available online?
Yeah, it's on powernickel.com right now.
Great. And I can tell you from Red Cloud Securities, the replays of this will also be available on our website and on YouTube and so on. So it'll be out there. Well, great. I think that's all the questions we have. I'd like to thank Terry Lynch for presenting today, and thank you everyone for tuning in and for all your questions. A reminder that Red Cloud Securities will be back tomorrow afternoon when our webinar series continues with NV Gold presenting through Thursday, June 1st at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.